Welcome to another episode of On the Issues with Alon Ben-Meir. Today's guest is Lulzim Peci, Principal Founder and Executive Director of the Kosovar Institute for Policy Research and Development and a member of the Board of the Council of Kosovo Ambassadors. In this episode, Alon and Lulzim discuss political instability in Kosovo, particularly as the country is set to return to the polls for the third time in less than 18 months. They discuss what led to the series of elections and what we may be able to expect out of this upcoming election, as well as how this impacts Kosovo's ongoing efforts toward EU candidacy.
Good afternoon to you, Lulzim Peci. I am so delighted to have you with us this morning. So many things are happening in Kosovo. It's a small country in the Balkans, but it makes a lot of noise sometimes. But before we start, I'd like to introduce you for our audience very briefly, although your credentials are so vast. Peci holds PhD in political science from the Southeast European University in North Macedonia. He's the principal founder and executive director of the Kosovar Institute for Policy Research and Development. And between 2009 and 2012, he served as the ambassador of Kosovo to Stockholm. But more than anything else, I want to say I'm proud to have you also as a member of the board of our Institute for Humanitarian Conflict Resolution, which we launched this first day of May. And I feel very gratified about the progress we've already been making. And thank you so much for your wonderful contribution. And you are lending your name to this very important institution. Thank you again, Luzman.
Thank you, Professor. It is my great honor to serve to the board of the Institute, and it is one of the greatest honors in my career because I think that one of the most noble things that a person can do in his life is to dedicate himself or herself in working for human rights and humanitarian conflict prevention. And so I'm talking from the very human point of view as a human being. So thank you for the honor that you have given to me to serve at your board.
No, the pleasure is all mine, as you said so, rightfully so. I don't think nowadays there's anything, in fact, historically speaking, there's nothing more important than preserving the human dignity and human rights. And sadly, if not tragically, nowadays we are witnessing an uptick, a significant rise in human rights violations in so many different countries. In fact, I was counting lately, I said nearly 130 different countries around the world. In just about every continent, obviously, there is massive and significant human rights violations, which is affecting especially women and children the most. It's a tragic, and I don't think, there is no effort it would be sufficient to deal with this horrific plague, I should say. But your work, my work together, and others that join us, and so many other actually institutions that deal with human rights violation, their work, our work is more important than ever before. And I thank you so much again for joining us in this critically important campaign. Today I want to focus a little bit about the situation in Kosovo. You know better than anyone else the political instability that's been Kosovo found itself, especially in the last about 17, 18 months. I'd like to inform to our audience what is happening. Why is it a tiny country like this, which from my perspective just was created in 2008, should have, if anything else, demonstrate unity, decisiveness, clarity, in order to project itself. It is deserving of the sovereignty and the independence that's been granted. But it seems to me that the political situation remains, even from the beginning, rather unstable. Why is it? and what is going to take, from your perspective, to take the kind of corrective measures necessary in order to put Kosovo on the path, specifically in its effort to join the European Union?
So you have rightfully mentioned that this is not the first time that we are having a kind of stalemate in creating the governments and governmental institutions in Kosovo. And I see here two crucial factors. From 2016 and on, we had almost every 2 years we had elections. And this is the reason that governments were collapsing one after the other were negotiations with Serbia, because the country couldn't find unity and political parties couldn't find unity to deal with this problem, which is I think of national interest of Kosovo to close this chapter as soon as possible. So the dialogue has been used always by opposition, whoever party was in opposition, for political benefits and for electoral purposes, and not for the national interest. And I think that this is one of the reasons which continues and nowadays to have an impact on political stability in Kosovo. Right now, in the last 18 months, well, after 2021, we had a stable government. We had the Kurtis government. It is the first government after the independence which served the full term.
Right.
So, yeah, so we thought that, okay, we do have a kind of stability right now, and that we will be able to move forward. Again, in February of the last year, Kurtis party won 48 MPs, but it was not able to create the government because of the lack of capacity of political parties to achieve an agreement for a coalition government.
Right.
Yeah. And okay, so we ended up again in extraordinary elections in December of the last year. And Kurti this time won 51%, around 56 MPs. And so he was able to create the government, but at the last moment, he didn't support our former president Vjosa Osmani to become president, and here the crack happened again, because LDK was somehow in favor to support her candidacy, but Kurti didn't want it. And I think that here we do have a problem. And the problem is that Prime Minister Kurti doesn't want a strong president who has wide access and strong network in international community. So he wants to keep under control foreign affairs as well, which is one of the major competencies of the president. And so we have ended up in this situation again. So we will have elections more or less in 11 days from now.
Right.
And so these are going to be the third elections within 18 months.
Right.
My fear is that if there is no will to achieve a compromise, to achieve an agreement between Kurtis party, which is a favorite of these elections, but we don't know how much Kurti might gain this time, and the other parties in the opposition, I'm afraid that we might end up again in elections.
Right.
And this is going to be very damaging for the country, because since you were talking about European Union, there is a big risk that we are going to lose a lot of support, which is planned to be given to Kosovo by growth plan of the European Union. So this is going to have a lot of negative effects.
Right.
But when you put narrow political interest above national interests, then this is more or less the consequence of this logic. And because politicians sometimes they think about their term, their political interest, but they don't think so much about the interest of the citizens and the interest of the country. So the most important thing for them is power grabbing, and in my opinion, and not serving it to the national interest as they are supposed to do, but this is not happening.
Yeah, my impression that Osmani has been fairly rather popular, publicly speaking. Am I right with making that assumption? And now that she joined the opposition party, do you think this is going to have a direct or sure it's going to have effect on the result of the election? To what extent do you think that might change the trajectory as a result of the election?
Well, it's by all means, it's going to have an effect on elections, but not a dramatic change of the election results. So yes, it will have an effect. It will make necessary coalition government to be created if we want to have a government. And so this is going to be the effect. But in my opinion, Vedvendosje still remains as a favorite to win these elections again.
I think that for sure they will win proportionately speaking. The question is whether they're going to win the number of parliamentarians necessary, which is, I think you have 120 in the parliament, am I right?
Yes, that's right.
And they need at least 61 to form a government on his own, that is.
Yes, yes.
And he's most like, I mean, again, it's very hard to predict what is going to be the result of the election, but what is the likelihood that he will, in fact, generate a 61 parliamentarian to fact to form a government of his own? To me, it doesn't seem likely. What's your take?
Well, actually, Kurti doesn't need exactly 61 MPs to win 61 MPs. With 51 MPs, he will be able to create a government because always 10 non-majority seats in the parliament which belong to non-Serbian communities vote for the government or Kurti or the other governments, whoever is able to create the government. So he can create a government with 51 MPs. But I'm afraid that this time Kurti will not be able to achieve that result. So
Yeah,
most
yeah,
probably, so he will be below 51 MPs, and in that case, he will be forced to, if he wants to have a government in place,
they
he
have to have
will
a
be
coalition.
forced, yes, to achieve an agreement with uh, opposition parties, one, two, three, depends from the results. But it is another issue which is at our door, let's say,
Yeah,
and it is election of the president. Because the first item of the agenda after the assembly is constituted will be election of the president, not election of the government. And
yes,
for the election of the president, we will need at least 80 MPs to vote for the president
right,
and 61 of them to vote in favor of one candidate. So this is the situation.
right.
And I think these circumstances are I think more favorable for creating a coalition government which can guarantee presence and voting of 80 MPs during the election of the president. And I think that, well, it depends from Kurti. Does he wants to
Yeah.
create a coalition government or not at
But
the end of the
but
day?
the last election, as you well know, the opposition party simply refused to join him to create a coalition government. in nearly 10 months. There was not really government in transition. He was just an acting prime minister. And there was a new election. He won 51% of the vote. What if he does not gain the 51 at least? Why do you feel that he will be able to attract one or two smaller opposition parties to join him to form a coalition government in order to govern? What has changed? Has anything changed in the internal dynamics of the political and within the opposition parties?
Well, to create a stable government and to elect new president, he will need a party who at least has 22, 23 MPs in the parliament, or two parties, opposition parties,
Right.
which can have those numbers of MPs. So this is the situation. Uh, I hope that political wisdom will prevail and that we will be able to create the government, because otherwise this will be very much damaging for our interest, having in mind a very turbulent situation in the region, but also and in Europe and in the world. We don't have a comfort right now to produce instability. We need stability, and we need to have strong and credible institutions in order to manage the country and to push forward the Euro-Atlantic agenda of Kosovo in under these
Right.
circumstances which are not favorable for Kosovo.
Right. During his reign, it's near 4 years actually. He did not. I don't believe in looking at surveying the situation in Kosovo, which I do on a regular basis. A number of things that he did not pursue, in my view, effectively. One, he pretty much ignored the opposition. That is, even though he did not need them, they are not in the government. As a prime minister, if he want to engender a national consensus, I would consult the opposition. It doesn't hurt to consult the opposition. He doesn't take their advice, but a good prime minister will have to show that capacity of seeking a national consensus. That's one problem I feel it was missing. The second one, he didn't fail to manage his affairs well with the United States. I mean, eventually the United States pretty much gave up on Kurti, especially when Trump came to power. And then, as you well know, the EU imposed sanctions on him, which is very unusual. It was finally lifted recently. So, what has changed? It is Kurti as a prime minister, as a human, as a person, may have, of course, won the a majority vote, but it's my impression that he is not necessarily liked, or that he does not really attract um, the kind of support that it is embedded in a more concrete policy, in a manner that it is going to have, that is a clear policy. What is my agenda? He never produced a very clear agenda, domestic, foreign. This is what I'm going to pursue. But he was, in my view, stuck with the northern municipality, the Serbian municipalities. That was one of his main preoccupations. Is my impression wrong in this regard and by this component that I just mentioned to you?
Well, Professor, I can't agree more with you. So, no, I fully subscribe to what you said until now. But if you let me, I would add few things.
Please, please.
Yeah, because first and foremost, the word compromise for Kurti and for Vedvendosya is a strange thing.
Yes.
Yeah, so compromise for Kurti and Vedvendosya is a betrayal. So compromise, it is understood as concession,
Yes, yes.
not as a tool or not as something through which you achieve an agreement. And when you equalize compromise with concession in your political vocabulary, and not only that, but also in your political behavior, then It tells a lot about political mindset of Edvendosia and Kurti.
Right. Right.
So I think this is a big problem.
Yes.
This is a very big problem because when there is not a will, or when, in the cases when such a mindset prevails, then it is very difficult or almost impossible to build a normal political life,
Correct.
because every human being is supposed and is makes compromises every day. We do make compromises with our family, with our friends, with everyone, because this is how life functions. But if you don't recognize it as a way of conducting politics, then it is very problematic. And you are right on this. So because the lack of capacity for compromise uh, opens the door to autocracy or to the full failure, because there is nothing in the middle.
Yeah, just to your point, I just want to mention the fact that it took 10 months. He was unable to form a government because there was no compromise for the speaker. And now the government is collapsing again because they could not compromise who's going to be the president. And this is exactly what you're saying. They don't understand that the politics is the art of compromising, and not submission, but it's compromising so you can reach a mutually beneficial agreement. But that is not the case, and that is unfortunate. I'm sorry to interrupt you. Just go ahead, please.
No, but from here comes in my fear that we might end up in new elections again, even after the elections which are scheduled to take place on 7th of June.
Right.
And so this is very problematic. And for the future of the country, as I mentioned a bit earlier, but also when it comes to the situation in the north, and also to the relations with the United States of America, this political behavior is proving to have consequences for Kosovo. So we are facing something that no one could imagine 4 or 5 years ago. Having sanctions from European Union, it was out of mind that Kosovo might get them, or suspension of the strategic dialogue with the United States. So it was again like out of beyond imagination. But unfortunately, these things are happening.
Right.
And Kurti, so far, and when it comes to the results of his governance, I must say that the track record is very poor.
Exactly. Exactly right.
Is
Right.
very poor in all respects. So, starting with reform in education or health, which are basic things for the future of the country, then economy is not performing very well. Kurti is not friend of market economy, I must say, and of private sector. And and when it comes to foreign policy, we don't have pretty good relations right now and with neighboring countries. So because in the beginning of his mandate, of the last mandate, he tried to interfere in Albania, but he failed completely there, because he tried to participate in elections in Albania, but his intervention faced a fiasco.
Right.
And since then, relations with Edi Rama have been very poor, and there was a lack of trust between them. So we do have relations with Albania. They are not bad, but they could have been much better.
Considerably better. So,
Yes.
so in this regard, why do you think, why do you feel that in spite of the fact that he did not perform well, not in domestically in connection with with education and with the economy, with the, especially the brain drains that have been happening because people who graduate from universities simply have no jobs. They are forced to leave, going someplace else. Yes, they're supporting the Kosovo's economy from the outside, sending money. But in reality, his performance, exactly what he said, was rather poor. Why is it then the public still support him?
Well, this is huge enigma for me, but there are, I think, different reasons. I will try to name few, but I'm not able to give fully qualified opinion about it. So this, please take them as my assumptions, because I never seen a study of electoral behavior in Kosovo to give you a fully qualified opinion, but I do have some assumptions about it.
I'm sure your
So
assumptions is going to be pretty much accurate, being there and knowing what you've been doing. Anyway, go ahead, please.
yes, so first and foremost, I think that there is a change of generation, because people in Kosovo then, and so let me describe this. So people who have been born in 1999 or 1995, right now they are around 30 or more than 30 years old. And so these voters who start, they don't have memory of the war.
Right,
They don't have memory of the Serbian oppression.
right,
They have no memory of the past.
right,
And with this generation, it's very easy to project new narratives like nothing has been done in the last 20 years or something like this. So this is one, and this is the narrative that Kurti has used quite a lot.
right.
The second point, so it is, and, and the second issue here, in my opinion, is that parties who have governed in the past, they were quite corrupted.
Yes,
And so Kurti started his journey with anti-corruption agenda, which is proving to be very weak as well.
hmm
But and so, but anyway, there are still people who do think that it's all who think that although we have a stagnation, it's better to have Kurti than to have those corrupted parties coming back to power again.
right, right. Now, I think
So
two of these points are extremely valid. What else do you think might allow him to continue to enjoy relatively, popular support?
and the third factor is diaspora, which is generally seeing Kurdi as a strong leader who is able to say no to the West and to be nationalistic. And as you may and as you know very well, diasporas are always more nationalistic than people on the ground.
Correct, correct, correct.
And so I think that these are three factors. Otherwise, when it comes to brain drain, for you viewers, I have to say that in the last 5 years, 200,000 citizens of Kosovo have emigrated to the West.
That's massive. That's nearly
It's
10%.
massive. And no,
10%.
and let me give you another figure as well. Last year, in 2025, Kosovo became the largest investor in Albania. So imagine,
Right,
because investors from Kosovo are moving their businesses to Albania. And our businesses and individuals have invested in this country 400 million euros. So those we are a tiny country. 400 million euros for United States do not tell a lot, but for Kosovo, as a very tiny country, it means a lot.
Oh, absolutely. That's massive. That's massive.
Yes, and so we do have these negative trends, and and I think that this situation will continue uh, as long as we and as long as opposition does not create a real alternative, a strong alternative to Kurti. Because another reason, and the final reason, is that opposition has no leadership.
Right. So I was going to, sort of a
Yeah,
recap.
so this is
Yeah.
the last reason, in my opinion.
Right, right. No, I think however, if you look at the 4 points you mentioned, I think you're absolutely right. In my view, it's rather solid, very solid. But if you look at all four reasons, you can say easily that he basically failed. In terms of, you would think this generation that, born in 95, 96, now will have come to realize, well, he did not deliver at all. Like you said, he also did not deliver when it comes to cleaning up, corruption. He was unable to do so. Then he failed actually to deliver a stronger economy, and he also failed to deliver better relationship with the EU, advancing Kosovo's interest in the direction of integration. So if this is the case, which I think we both agree, then why would he again? What's left, and I think you hit it on the right, nailed it, is that there is no alternative,
Exactly.
credible. Yeah, basically, that is the only thing
Credible
that's left
alternative.
on his behalf. Do you agree
Yes.
with that? There is
Yeah,
no alternative. So
there is not a credible alternative.
that's what is keeping him afloat at this point.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Wouldn't you think then, and last question in connection domestically, wouldn't you think the opposition would have understood exactly what you're saying, what we are saying here, and say to themselves, well, he succeeded because we have demonstrated weakness, we have no leadership, we have no alternate leaders that actually can rise to the occasion, to the needs of the country. Shouldn't they at least realize and try to cultivate a leader? I mean, this is, in my view, like it's a crisis, national crisis. When a national crisis, usually somebody will emerge and say, I can make a change. Why is it not happening there?
Well, I think that we are entering to this Balkanic syndrome,
Mhm.
and I'm going to explain it
Please,
if you let me. What
please,
does
of
it mean?
course.
Yeah, so opposition is aware about this, let's say, weaknesses. But unfortunately, they are not able to generate a new leadership, a new credible leadership who would be able to stand to Kurti and to provide a clear alternative. When it comes to political programs, they do have alternative, but unfortunately, they don't have a political leadership to push their vision.
Right,
So, yes, and this is more or less, this happens in the region more or less when a party gets a landslide victory, like Vedvendosje got it in 2021. So, this is what happened in Albania with the victory of Edi Rama.
right,
So, he's in power more than 16 years ago, I think, yeah. And so this is what is happening also. It happened also with Milo Djukanovic in Montenegro.
right,
It is
right.
what is happening with Vucic.
Yes,
And it was the very same thing happened then with Gruevski in North Macedonia. So most probably it's gonna, and Mickovsky's government is gonna have the same fate, so to continue for quite some time. Because when you and so this is a kind of Balkanic syndrome or Western Balkanic syndrome, which is prevailing here. And if you look at these parties which came to power like this, all of them came with the agenda of anti-corruption and nationalism to a certain extent. So it is a kind of combination, not all of them, but Yes, because Edi Rama has not nationalist agenda, but he came with anti-corruption and agenda and development agenda. Okay, fine. But Vucic was in Serbia. Vucic did the same. So it was anti-corruption and nationalistic agenda. It is more or less the same in with Kurti, but he's leftist and Vucic is rightist. And it is the same with Mickovsky in North Macedonia. So it's quite interesting. So I think that this is a kind
Then
of
my question to
Balkanic
you,
syndrome.
to what do you attribute that? That is this volcanic syndrome. What do you attribute it to? That is, it must have some historic roots. What is,
Well,
from your perspective?
well, for sure that it has some historical roots, for sure, because uh, if we look deeply in the region, there is, when it comes to the cultures and political cultures of the region, there are differences. So I'm not trying to put all of them in the same basket. But
Right.
in terms of heritage, it is a combination of Byzantine, Ottoman, and communist legacy,
Yeah.
which are somehow combined with each other. So right now, okay, we are in a kind of transition period, which is a never-ending story. And I think that a lot has to deal with this, with the combination of these three cultures in one way or the other. I might sound, but I'm looking at it from historical perspective.
Right. Right.
Yes, and this is more or less what former Romanian foreign minister, he was arguing the same, that it is very difficult liberal democracy to flourish in this part of Europe exactly because of these reasons.
Right.
Because if we look carefully right now, so we are nowadays, it's the year 2026.
Yes.
So transition started in 1990. So it's 36 years
Yes.
since the transition started. So it seems the transition is going to last in this region more than Cold War.
Right.
And we have not yet succeeded to build strong liberal democracies.
Right.
We do have, how to say, institutions which are designed in the format of liberal democratic states, but societies and political culture is not liberal democratic.
Yeah, and you might think,
Yeah.
being Kosovo wants to join the EU, and they know you're the structure, the EU member states have, and democratic countries, they all have a sort of constitution, they have an institution, democratic institution, a free press, and all that much of the what govern basically what this define democracy more or less do exist, and so you would think that Kosovo, who so eagerly wants to join the EU, would look at the EU model and say, well, we can begin to sort of duplicate it, sort of copy it, albeit difficult, albeit not easy, but gradually move to that direction. Yet Kosovo still, as of now, still pushing for EU membership, at least to become a candidate, when in fact that kind of progress in terms of advancing toward democratic form of government or true democracy, he has not made enough significant inroads yet. And I mean, I'm not surprised that the EU still refuses even to consider Kosovo as a candidate, let alone a member.
Well, I'm gonna explain it a bit because European Commission is ready to move with the candidacy status of Kosovo. The problem is with five non-recognizers of the EU.
Right, that's right.
Yes, so Kosovo fulfills the conditions to become candidate country. In some areas, it's doing much better than countries which are in the process of accession. But the problem, and we do have in this political problem, which does have an effect on Kosovo because it has, how to say, amputated the capacities of Kosovo to move forward with the reformist agenda. It has an effect. But a wise leadership of Kosovo would push with radical reforms to prepare the country for EU membership, regardless of lack of, let's say, formal status for candidacy or for accession. We can do that.
Yeah, but then one of the main things I'm hearing from the Europeans are saying that the lack of progress in the negotiation between Kosovo and Serbia, and the need for them to finally reach an agreement, just as a mutual recognition, is a prerequisite to membership in the EU. And there was very little progress with Serbia. And as a matter of fact, relation with Serbia is getting worse, not better, over the last several years. And that is, and when I get to the point where what is the role of the United States in this regard? So that is one other important component. What do you say about that?
Well, I will say yes. You know, because Kosovo here is in disproportionate situation. Because Serbia has opened, as far as I know, around 14 chapters in the negotiation process with the European Union, and Kosovo has not even candidacy status. So Serbia is moving forward somehow. They have backslided last years a bit, and Kosovo is not able to make formally even the first step towards EU integration. And at the same time, when for both countries is required to solve their bilateral problems. But here is the trick, because for Serbia it is a condition to enter EU. For Kosovo, ironically, this became a problem to open the door for the EU integration process. And so here is the trick. So that's why Kosovo is in a very disadvantageous situation. Yes, Kosovo and Serbia, they have to settle their bilateral problems, because you cannot enter in EU while having this kind of problems, and to export your problems within the European Union. This is a clear policy since the Cyprus membership in the European Union. But when it comes to solving relations with Serbia, this is a process actually which, in my opinion, has lost momentum in 2016, when it was a momentum to move forward with the creation of association of Serb majority municipalities, but also to get a de facto recognition by Serbia. Because I think that at that time relations between two countries were pretty good, but since 2016 they started to move in the wrong direction. Then in 2017, basically, the option for partition of Kosovo or exchange of territories with Serbia started to be discussed. And this option was supported by the then head of EU foreign policy, Mogherini, and few European commissioners and a number of European states. And it was a crack within European Union, and of course this was supported then by Kosovo and Serbia back then, but they had not very much a clear idea how this might look like. At the end of the day, this failed, and it failed, and it was clear that and we moved back to, let's say, traditional normalization of relations by 2020. By 2020. And since then, we have had not a major progress. It was the the Brussels or Ohrid Agreement, which was sponsored by France and Germany in 2023. This happened after the aggression of Russia in Ukraine. It was a geopolitical urgency to push Kosovo and Serbia to normalize somehow their relations, not up to the end, but to create a framework for normalization. But it seems that and this is not working.
Yeah, I mean, it isn't
What?
because, this
Yeah,
agreement have called for reciprocal action, but on both sides. That is, for example, the Kosovo would make certain concessions, for example, to the municipalities in the north. The Serbia would have to respond, make another concession to for Kosovo. But so that did not happen. That is the French-German proposal. Both agreed
yeah,
upon, did not sign it, both agreed upon, but they failed to implement it because reciprocity simply did not exist. So both of them said, if you don't do this, I'm not going to do that. So they
yeah,
said, I want to switch because of limited time. I want to switch to the United States in connection
sure.
with Kosovo because this is, now, we know for a fact that the Trump, in many ways, favors Serbia. I mean, he may not state that openly, but the fact remains is that the relationship between Kosovo and the United States at this juncture is not great. There is no mediator, American representative, any at this point functioning between Serbia and to mediate between the two countries. Trump has a great deal of economic interest, for that matter, family interest in Serbia. So he's not necessarily trying to push the Serbs to make any kind of concession. And of course, as we all know, he have Putin as a major factor. So the Serbians at this juncture do not feel the pressure by the United States. There's no hardly much pressure by the EU. They have a full support of Putin, and they have never really conceded to agree to recognize Kosovo in the first place. So what is the prospect? In fact, there is any hope for any kind of progress at this point in the negotiations between Kosovo and Serbia, given now the prevailing new circumstances?
Professor, I have slightly different opinion about this.
Please.
In the beginning, it looked like that U.S. is favoring more Serbia, that they are going to have business interest in Serbia and all of this. But President Vucic has tried a lot to invest in US with the US administration, so in lobbying and all of this. But it seems that there was a U-turn of this policy because there are no investments of President Trump's family right now in Belgrade. That investment has failed. Um, then United States imposed almost sanctions to Serbia in regard to changing the ownership of Serbian oil industry, which belonged the majority of shares belong to Russia, and this is still continuing. So Serbia will be forced to put out Russians out of the oil ownership of the oil industry in Serbia, and uh, and uh, and so this is more or less the direction which has been taken towards Belgrade. So many people in Belgrade and well-informed people in Belgrade, they are looking at this as a fiasco of Vucic's policy towards United States and like a grave misunderstanding of President Trump's policies. And it appeared more or less to be like that. When it comes to Kosovo, so the new strategy, national security strategy of U.S. and Defense Act supports the territorial integrity and sovereignty of Kosovo, and also supports Kosovo's European and Euro-Atlantic ambitions. But the problem is that with the US, and also we shall not forget that Kosovo has been invited to participate in the border peace, and soon we will send our troops to Gaza as a part of this mission. So, in terms of security cooperation, Kosovo and United States do have pretty good relations. I must say, very good relations. But when it comes to relations with the Prime Minister Kurti, those relations are not good. So, and it is interesting because in the past, United States have sanctions Kosovo Security Force, so they have expelled Kosovo Security Force from Defender Europe 2023 when Kurti created problems in the north. But right now the policy has been changed somehow because because right now the policy is different because of mistakes of Kurti. US is not sanctioning security sector, and it is working very hard on increasing our security capacities, especially in military field.
I mean, this
So
is
it's
based on what I know, it's more coming from the EU rather than the United States. Recently, I had a conversation with from the State Department who said, really, in 2 words, he said, Kosovo is not priority for this administration right now. Is that a fair assessment?
that Kosovo is not part
It's
of.
not a priority when it comes to the Trump administration foreign policy. That the Kosovo is not a priority. It is something that, by the way, if they deal with it, they deal with it. If not, it doesn't really matter at this juncture.
Well, it's normal Kosovo not to be priority at this particular moment, having in mind the crisis in Ukraine, Iran, and Gaza. But I think that Western Balkans as such is priority, and because as far as I know, and uh, and I think that I know it very well, the Balkans is taken care on daily basis when it comes to security situation and the situation of energy
By the United States?
by the United States. Yes.
Well, I mean, I'm sure you know, but nevertheless, it seems to me, based on what you're hearing from this administration, this
I'm
is
talking about this administration,
yeah,
Professor.
I know you're talking about that. I have a different take on it, but be that as it may. The one thing that I just want to comment on it, and that is, where do you see all of this going? That is, there's going to be a new election. Kurti, I personally don't think is going to garner 51% like he did before. Again, based on the political conditions that exist currently in Kosovo. So I just wanted to, I wish we had a lot more time to discuss it. I can't believe it. It's already almost an hour. I would like you to sort of sum up the discussion. Where do you think, it's a kind of projection, where do you think Kosovo is going? If you were to predict where Kosovo is going to be, say, a year or two from today?
Professor, is difficult. We can talk about different scenarios, not predictions,
The different
because
scenarios,
it's
that's what I
it's
mean.
it's
Yes.
it's 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 very difficult to predict something. Well, in the best case, Kosovo will create, I mean, political parties will create a coalition government which will be able to elect the president as well and to have a clear direction when it comes to reforms in the country and with foreign policy agenda especially. So these two things to be put in track. This is the best case scenario. Uh, this is my hope, but I am prepared for the worst. And I think that chances for the not very good scenario are higher than for this best case scenario. So most probably we might end up in new elections again in autumn. And so we might enter in this Bulgarian cycle of elections as they had in Bulgaria, until now. So changing the governments and not being able to create the governments. And this is for me more likely scenario than this best case scenario.
Right.
It's pity for the country and for the people. And but the worst thing is that this will not only create political instability, which is obvious, but it will motivate people to leave the country and to emigrate to the West, because the worst situation in which people can fall, it's depression and the lack of hope for the future.
Right.
And in this kind of situation, then people, although they love their country, they are able to leave their country and to build their lives somewhere else, not only for them, but for their kids. And this, I think, might have very bad consequences, because we will lose the middle class, the class of technocrats, people who are capable of running the country, running the private sector, people in health and education sector, and and it will be very difficult to replace their capabilities in the short run. And undoubtedly, this will have a very bad impact on the potential for economic development of the country. Human capital is the most important capital for economic development, and I'm afraid that we are going to lose it if we continue like this.
And do you see the trend is continuing as we
Yes,
speak now?
as
You
we
know,
speak, the
is
trend
it
is continuing.
accelerating even?
Well, it can accelerate. It can accelerate. Can
Right.
accelerate. Yes, because people then, it's difficult, because if you don't have stable government, you will not have progress in the country. Instead of pushing the country forward, we are having just administration of the country, and administration is not a reform agenda. So here we are.
Well, I wish we had more time, but we have to do one other podcast at least in the near future, I hope, to cover
With
so
pleasure.
many areas related to Kosovo. I'm really grateful to you for taking the time, and I look forward to our continuing work for the Institute. I feel very gratified about the progress we already made, and thank you for your participation and for your support. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you very much, Professor. As I told you in the very
We
beginning,
must
it's a
agree
great
on
honor for
we
me.
must agree on something else before we leave. You call me Alon, not Professor.
Okay, I'll call you Alan. Yes, I'll do that. I'll
Thank
do
you
that.
so much again. Bye bye now.
Thank you so much, and have a nice day.
Thank you. Same to you. All the best. Bye bye.
All the best. Bye
Bye
bye.
bye. Thank you for listening to this episode on the issues. You can find this podcast on my SoundCloud page, and stay tuned to my social media accounts for the latest analysis and announcements.